if it is real fear.
Oh, there we go. We're live. So welcome to everybody watching here, and thank you everyone. Everyone is here, isn't it? Yeah, great. Yeah, Vida's gone now. Brilliant. So today we're going to talk about why we resist change. So I'm sure already you've noticed that comes up. You're laughing, Vicky, yeah?
I'm laughing.
Yeah. Why is it, do you think, that we do resist change then?
Fear.
Fear, yeah. Fear of what?
Unknown.
Yeah.
And losing our identity, what we think is our identity.
Yeah, fear of the unknown, fear of losing your identity, or the you that you've made up from all of those labels and the behaviours and everything that you thought was you. Anything else?
Four patterns of behaviours.
Sorry?
4 patterns of behaviours, you're used to it.
Yeah, so you're used to your life the way that it is and it feels uncomfortable to try and change it. Yeah.
Maybe fear of being rejected by the people that you're used to hanging out with. If you do change, if they're not following suit.
Yeah, that's a big one. Fear of rejection from people who you're used to spending your life with. Because if you change, then, you know, if you're elevating your life in some way and you no longer want to do the things that you used to do, then you've got to kind of make new choices and new behaviours, and that takes you away from them. And then what are they going to think about that? Are you going to lose the people who are around you? It can be very scary, that period, can't it, between like what is and what you know that you want. So although you might be, you know, it might be that you've just got to a point in your life where you realise that going out and getting drunk all the time isn't really doing anything for you. That feels like you're not getting the connection that you're craving in that way. So you might want to change your life and go into doing different things, but actually that's what all your mates want to do. So it can feel really hard to do that. So we've got this fear of the unknown, and it being really, really uncomfortable. We've got this fear of losing who you are, or who you think you are, who you've thought you are. We've got these, Lizzie was saying, these fears and these beliefs that are coming up that just tell you that you know where you are here. This is the status quo. It's going to require some effort. We're going to have to change here. So quite often what happens for people is they know they want something different in their life, but they're kind of waiting almost for something else to happen so that it jolts them into action. So whether that's loss of a loved one, or a breakup of a relationship, or a redundancy, or something like that, it's like, right, so now something outside of me has happened. I've got to make those changes now. I don't have any choice. Or you get a diagnosis, or there's something comes up in life where you think, I'm going to have to make those changes, which you knew all along that you had to change, or you wanted to make, but it was just so hard to do. And it makes sense because that is the way that we're wired. We're wired for survival. So why wouldn't we want things to stay pretty safe and predictable, and to have that known tribe around us who might not behave in the way that we align with still? They might not have the same aspirations as you do, but it feels more comfortable to stay around them. So if we think of the safety, or the perceived safety, of being in the known and sticking with what we're comfortable with, no matter how much you go to law of attraction workshops, or you make New Year's resolutions, whatever it is that you want to do, nothing will change, because subconsciously, underneath it all, you really just want to stay safe and comfortable with what you're doing. You know, you can predict it. You know what's coming. There's nothing unusual. But at some point, you come to something like this because you realize, actually, I've got to, this is the time to make those changes. And maybe you make a commitment to doing that. But unless you're working on what's happening underneath that and what that resistance is, it happens much slower. So someone was saying, I think it was Emma was saying about the fear of losing, like what you already know and that perceived safety that you have. And years ago, I had to do that. I had to just get to the point where there's everything in my environment and the people in my environment. I loved them loved them dearly, but there was just something not quite working in my life. And I was depressed. Went to the doctors. Guess what the doctors said? Here's a pill.
Take these tablets.
Yeah, take these tablets, or it's just PMT or whatever it was. I was thinking, actually, there's no reason logically why I should be depressed. I've got my kids, I had my husband, I had a roof over my head. I loved my work. There wasn't really any reason for it. But I just felt this real sense of loneliness and disconnect, and just like there was so much more that I had to offer, but I couldn't quite do it. And then there was that thing of like, well, I want something to change in my life, but that's going to require somebody else to do something. If they could only do that, then things would feel a lot easier. So as everybody does, you spend that time kind of, if you can do this and you can do that, life will flow a lot better. And it doesn't work that way. You can't make other people change. You can only do what's right for you. So it got to the point where I left my marriage, and I was like, something's got to go. I can't be the best version of me if I'm also trying to pull everybody else along with me. And it turned out to be the best thing that I did. So we split up, and I kind of pulled my energy back from where it was going and tried to kind of, micromanage or control everybody else in a way, and pulled it back to me. And I thought, I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to be the one that makes the change. And ultimately, a few years later, we ended up getting back together because we were both different people by then. And I remember just a couple of months after we'd broken up, and Graham was just like, well, I don't know what we can do. And I just kept saying to him, you need to be the best version of you. Don't worry about what you can do to make me happy, because that's not your job. That's my job. It's your job to look after you. And, when we both do that and we become like the best of ourselves, we'll see what happens then. It turned out that actually doing that was the best thing. But that took a huge amount of courage and a huge amount of action. And if I hadn't done that, I would probably still be stuck in that cycle. And it was really, really scary. It was really scary to do that. As you know, if you've tried to change anything in your life, or you've thought that you're going to have to shatter things and it's going to affect somebody else, then you can just keep on going, and you're not living your life and they're not living their best life either. So we have the opportunity where we can wait for something to happen, or we can do it now. We can make that change now when we're feeling okay and we're not right on the floor, and we can find these communities and find information to help us. Like the work that Heal Scotland does is there's a lot of free information out there, and you don't have to go all gung-ho and right, I'm ending my marriage and this is what's happening. It can be a case of just small changes that get you feeling a little bit better, and then from that space you can do something else, and you can build it that way. So if we think 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of those are the same thoughts that you thought yesterday. If you wake up in the morning and you're straight away reaching for your phone, or you're connecting to who you were, and you're checking your emails, and you're thinking about what you've got to do, and you're accessing all of who you thought you were from the past, then you're going to push that into your future, and nothing's going to change. So what we want to do is to work with that subconscious mind. And the first step to change really is to become aware of the excuses that you're telling yourself, the reasons why you can't change, why you can't find the time to do what you need to do. What is it that you're telling yourself will happen for other people? What's the story that's going on in there? And it's called metacognition. It's thinking about what you're thinking about, just becoming aware of what's going on in the background. Because until you know that, you're just on that autopilot of you take that day and you put it on tomorrow. That's the way that it's going to go. So you can do this by just tuning in terms of, for yourself, you can do it through meditation or journaling and noticing. If you wake up first thing on a morning and you want to just write down all of the things that popped into your head, journaling in the stream of consciousness, it can become very clear what's happening in the background. So the things that you're thinking of doing, the people you think you have to please or to see, whatever it is that's coming up, and something that's really tiny that you've been meaning to do for a year might be in there, like if I could just sort that out, then that would, and you just don't do it. It's just this low level stress in the background. Yeah, I could just edit my website. And how long would that take you?
Half a day to make some good progress.
Yeah.
But it's not happened for 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years later, it would take you half a day to do it, and you just resist doing it. Yeah. So what's underlying that? Why would you resist that?
Identity crisis.
Right.
Because it's yeah, that's the story.
That's a story, yeah. But
you just try on something for a month, couldn't I? You know, like,
yeah. And if you think about, because that is a huge one, who you thought that you were, it's to change from that into something else is almost as if you're moving away from your tribe and you're putting yourself out there to something new. And if, like you've just said, to try on something new might be fun for a month, you could just do it anyway and see what happens. But I think there's a lot of pressure where we think that this is where we've been, this is where we've got to go to. We've took 30, 40 years to get to this point, and we think that suddenly we have to suddenly be there. And we don't want any of this process in the middle of it. We just want it to happen. But you've got to take some action. There's got to be something that comes out of that. I know we were talking, one of the women here was saying about getting new kitchen, new bathroom put in. It's just like, it's going to be an absolute nightmare getting this done. This period is going to be absolutely awful. But actually, you can't have it any other way. You can't get to that unless you look at what is and honor the fact that it's going to take some getting through to get to the other bit. But if you're keeping that focus on at the end of it, it's going to be this rather than what the pain's going to be for going through it, the chaos that's going to be caused, all of the unknown and the control about, well, what if people don't turn up and it goes on for longer than that? Or what about all of the stuff I have to do afterwards? You could very easily go, I can't be bothered with all of that, because you overwhelm yourself with too much information and you want to keep yourself safe. Well, it doesn't matter, I just won't do it. But if you want anything, it's looking at that resistance and recognizing where it's coming from and having the ability to be able to talk to yourself about it. So if you could just do that half a day on your website.
And just try on an identity or try on a way of communicating. And it might not be the perfect fit, but it will be one step.
Yeah.
I'm getting better at it.
Yeah.
It might come up.
And it comes back to fear, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's the fear of being seen as well, and other people. Like it's the whole round hole square peg, other way around. Yeah, and getting put in a box, and actually how, for you too, Kaz, like how do you communicate what you do, what you offer people, and like I see a beautiful social media presence of yours, but yeah, it's just there's so much in an experience with you, and with an experience with me in the Quest 9, it's like if I just did a photograph of the Quest 9, it's like that's 2-dimensional.
Yeah.
Compared to what you've experienced with me so far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm, like that's what I'm trying to learn how to play with that. And actually, I was inspired this morning by Lilia showing that man's website.
Mm-hmm.
She showed it to you as well. And it's like, he's communicating very beautifully how to that sort of fusion of tech and the natural world, the senses, and how there can be a bridge. So by me saying I'm willing to do my website, that's now kind of cropped up as an inspiration. So that's the movement.
Yeah.
And I'm going on.
No, it's fine. So what you're saying about all of these different ways that we look at stuff is there's conditioning, isn't there? And that's how we've come to communicate with each other. So the basic human desire is for survival. That's what we want to do, is we want to survive. And in order to do that, we have this tribal thing going on, where this is who you are, this is where you're from, this is what you do. There's all of this lower chakra stuff is about survival and about the tribe and being accepted in the people around you, because that's where the safety is. You're more likely to survive with a community. And it's just the way that we are. We're social beings. So when we want to try something new, it's almost like we're looking for a label or an idea of something of what we want to be. But what you're saying is actually we're more than these labels. We're more than this thing that we do or what we offer. And that process of change can become scary because you think you have to have all that shit figured out at the end. Yeah. And that's where I get lost as well. You know, we just had that conversation at breakfast before. I think it was with Nicola, and was saying, how do you define what you do? Like, if people come to me, I'm kind of like, well, there's a bit of this and a bit of that, and I don't really want to give it a label, because actually what I do is to try and get people away from the labels and away from them boxes. So to try and put myself in one feels very strange.
And even a fireman will do so much more than all that's on the job description.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even though that's a label that they might identify with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there can be some resistance there, because if you wanted to change your website and put yourself out as something, it's kind of like there's something in writing there that's going to say, this is me, this is what I do, this is kind of how it is.
This is what I can do.
This is what I can do.
This is what I'm willing to do right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So resistance is really, 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 really interesting. Because we get used to these habits and routines, and that fear that's there, sometimes it's not a fear of failure, you know, like you're wanting to get started with something. Sometimes it's a failure of the success. Because again, from a tribal perspective, if I just was to talk about myself, like I've wanted to move to Scotland for 30 odd years. But then when I was younger, was there something there that was, if I do that, I'm leaving behind everything that I've known up until that point? I don't think so, because I just love it so much. But you know, there's things like that where you think, is there this fear of you're going to lose something or someone? That change can be so drastic, but actually it can flip the other way. So if you were to make some drastic changes in your life, say you come to something like this and your body knows, like, yeah, this is amazing, this is how I want to feel, this is what life should be like, I want this community, I don't want to go back to the city, it's great having this organic food, and all of these things that you know feel better for you. You might want to make that change. If you could then move away and stay in that kind of environment where you basically have created this, not a new identity, but you've created this new energy that you want to be in. You've changed that energy, so your life is going to change, because if you're not going back into the old environment and you went somewhere new, so say I just didn't go home and I stayed up here and I was like, this is absolutely awesome. This is what I want to do. I want to be helping people and having communities like this. If I was to stay up here, that's easier to do. because you haven't got that old resistance from your environment, from the people around you, from the places that you normally go to, the things that are routine and habitual that you have to do. And the body is quite habitual. The mind's quite habitual. So
Very.
Yeah, it craves certain things, and it can be things that are conditioned, but it's also chemical and hormonal. And so if we've been thinking and behaving and acting in certain ways for a long period of time, when our bodies are used to that and they become routine, and we talked the other day about the clocks that are there, that chemical within us is asking for something. So whether it's something like you always have to have something sweet after your tea, and you might be full, but then you're like, hang on a minute, I'm feeling like I need something. You don't actually need it. There's nothing there. It's just your body's used to getting something sweet. And it's the habits that we need to try and change. And we don't have to be going in and doing everything all at once, although you can do that. Creating small habits that just get you out of that loop and get you thinking in a different way is the way that we do it. So if you go to a workshop, or you're around inspirational people, or you've read a book, or whatever it is that you do, and you connect with what you want instead, what you would choose instead, and you go, right, that's it, that's what I'm going to do. You consciously know there's something else, there's another choice, something fresh has come into your knowledge, into your awareness. But all of your experience is in the subconscious. All of your past experiences are there. So if you've got 95% in your subconscious and just 5% in your conscious mind, where you're wanting to go, and you want to direct it, you want to do something, but underneath it all, the subconscious mind might not support that. So there's ways that we change the subconscious mind, either through repetition, so keep doing a small habit over and over and over again, or to do something like super learning wise, where you go into that brainwave state, which is where we were conditioned in the first place. So from before birth up until the age of 7, when you're in that brainwave state of theta, when it's like imagination, and you don't know real from imagined, and we don't now, but all of those experiences that happen to us, we take them very literally, and they're there, and that's how we learn how to be in the world. So if we want to install something new, then getting into that brainwave state is how we install the new beliefs. So when people do things like diets or trying to change anything in their life, they think about having to take things away without really thinking about what they're going to put in instead, because there has to be something there. It's really hard to just take a habit away. It's like when people stop smoking, they'll go onto a patch or something that's going to replicate the action, and you kind of wean yourself off it if you have to, because it's just that habitual thing that keeps happening. Has anyone here stopped smoking just like that? Did you do it like that, like just a decision?
2 days on licorice, and I did audio and lots of meditation.
Yeah. That transition period, how did it go for you?
I was all right. The licorice was fantastic. And the licorice.
Yeah, so you replaced it with something else.
Yeah, and then did the last step of when I was totally detoxing that out, the licorice was there, and then when it was gone, the licorice went away. But with tapping in and getting rid of audio.
Yeah, so Nikki's just saying when she stopped smoking, she went from the cigarettes to having licorice when that need came up. But up until that point, when she was deciding that she wanted to stop smoking, she would have had that conscious awareness. She would have been aware of what excuses she was giving herself. She would have known what she was wanting to stop, why she was wanting to stop it, and what she was wanting instead. And then she had the tools of doing the tapping when she was feeling overwhelmed with those emotions and reminding herself constantly, I'm choosing this because of all of these reasons, which are going to support me and help me feel more alive, more vibrant, more connect, whatever it is that you're choosing instead.
Here,
Pardon?
here.
Fresh air.
Oh, right. I can't get in here.
Yeah, choosing fresh air. Yeah, so that repetition and the super learner, like the theta breve. So you can start small with small habits, and do it. If you do it after something you already do, you know, like if it was breath work, for example, and you wanted to get into coherence breathing, you might say, well, I wanted to pick 3 minutes in the day so already you're thinking, right, time's a bit of an issue, or your body's an issue, like you can't do that, and you can go, I can do a minute, I'm sure I can breathe for a minute. But if you were to say, right, every time I make a cuppa and I put the kettle on, that's my signal. After I put the kettle on, I'm just going to, the whole time the kettle's boiling, I'm going to do an in-breath for 5 and an out-breath for 5. And you do that throughout your day. And it just becomes a new way. And then you've already got over one excuse or one story that you've been telling yourself that you don't have time to do that, you can't do that. And you've kind of got a little celebration for yourself, like, yeah, I can do that. I made that into a big thing, and it didn't need to be a big thing, you know. So then it just becomes where I'm just going to check in with myself, not just when I've got the kettle on. I'm going to just, every time I pick up my phone or I put my phone down or whatever it is, and it just becomes that pretty soon you're just naturally starting to breathe that way. You might notice yourself falling back into the old way and think, oh, I'm feeling a little bit funny, or I'm feeling a bit anxious here. Oh, I know how to do that thing. And you can go back to it. Was someone going to say something there? Oh, no, it was your paper. It sounded like when someone goes. Yeah, and another great thing for repetition, when you're first starting to make change, a lot of people will make like a big list or a plan of what they want to do. So say you went away from here and you thought, I'm going to make a daily routine, I'm going to go to bed at a certain time, I'm going to eat better, I'm going to do all of these things, and it becomes overwhelming, and you make yourself a big list. And then you'll get back to real life and in this environment, and you might not do all of those things, and you can stop beating yourself up for that and be like, look, I failed again, what's the point? Does anyone get that one? You come to that point where there's a decision can be made, you can make that choice for change, and it just feels like, well, I didn't eat the soup I made for me dinner, and I grabbed a sandwich instead from Greg's, and so I might as well have a cake as well. And so you put yourself back into that loop. So if you were to just start, and the way that we'll learn how to do this is every day to become aware of the daft things that you're doing. We talked the other day about prajna parada, those crimes against wisdoms, the things that you know that you're doing that aren't supporting you. So if you're having a coffee after 5 when you know that that's going to make you hyper, or you're choosing something food-wise, or somebody always pushes your buttons with something, and you say, I'm going to respond differently next time, but then actually you don't. If you got into the habit on a morning of really connecting to what that change is that you want to make in your life and how you would feel if that change was made, then you're setting the tone for the day. But then also giving yourself the grace of being human, you know, being realistic with what it is that you're expecting to do. In terms of changing your life, like go with something that's going to have a little bit of impact and try that. But having the grace for yourself, because you're going to catch yourself every time you do it. And we know that we're changing habits, and habits have been formed over a long time. So installing the new habits can take a little bit longer than what we would like them to. So when you do that and you notice, so if the start of the day, if you say, right, I'm going to move through my day and I'm going to choose to be this version of me that takes things more in my stride. I'm going to be more easygoing. I'm not going to get stressed when I come in from work and the dishes are there. And then you come in from work and the dishes are there and you're just like, oh, I've been working really hard on this habit all day. I've been breathing when I've been making the cuppa at work, and I come in and I just feel all zen, and then I come in and then there's that and you explode. But you know that you could have just done your breath again. You could have went in and went, oh yeah, so that's interesting. I notice I'm feeling a bit anxiety in my body. And you could have chosen that. So if at the end of the day you sat down and you gave yourself some time to notice when you noticed that you are at that choice point of continuing with the old habit or choosing something different, choosing something new, then that's a win, because you've caught yourself. You might have still done it, but you've caught yourself doing it. So then you can think, well, what could I do tomorrow if that happens? And you can create a little plan for how you might respond instead. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you can do that on a daily basis to start off with, you know, like we will do this as a journaling exercise probably tomorrow, but you don't have to have the full journal or anything. You could just wake up in the morning and choose one word and say, this is what I'm going to practice being. And like Rasheen said before, just try it on and see what happens. And I think the main thing I've found with change is to stay curious, to just really get curious with yourself and not take it so seriously. Because when you get to that point, when you're ready for change, quite often you can go into this blame and this complaining thing. And even if it's about yourself, you know, you might stop blaming everybody else. You might stop looking outside of you, and you might realize, actually, I do need to make these changes. But then you can really start being hard on yourself and saying, how stupid am I? I should have done this a long time ago, or why have I always done this? And you focus on the weaknesses. And that's not helpful either.
Can I just, I was talking there, so years ago, I used to sell diet products. And I had one lady, a big lady, she's 28 stone, and she'd lose about 3 stone, and then she'd put it back on. And we're kind of going through this psychology of what was going on. And as much as she wanted to change, her weight came with benefits. We came to the realisation. So she'd say to her husband, you'll have to get the shopping look because I can't walk round. You'll have to do this stuff because it came with benefits. And it became a part of who she was. And it's interesting to watch people. And when I worked in a place, somebody wanted to give up smoking, but they didn't get a fat break if they didn't smoke.
Yeah.
So you have to question everything, don't you? As to, is there a benefit here that I'm not quite yet ready to let go of?
Yeah, absolutely.
Albeit negative, but it comes with a benefit of some sort.
Yeah, so I'm just going to repeat in case you couldn't hear that. Yeah, absolutely. So there's some secondary gain. There's some benefit to you staying the way that you are. So if it's not a fear of losing something or somebody, it can be a fear of losing some privilege, something that you quite like, something that that makes you feel seen or supported in some way. So it was just giving the example of someone who had diet products and lost a lot of weight, but then realized that they actually lost the benefits when they lost the weight. So the husband wouldn't do the shopping for them or anything like that. And the cigarette break, if I give up the cigarettes, then I don't get a break. And that is the way that it goes. And you know, people that I've worked with, this comes up time and time again, and it's one of the major questions is like, what changes in your life if you are well? The illness thing is really, really interesting because of the way that it's been set up and the way that everyone's conditioned and the way that society is. is that sometimes it's better to be ill and to be on benefits, because then you feel that sense of safety and nurturing on some level. So if some part of you does want to get well and does want to change, and you might have some absolutely amazing gift and something to contribute to humanity, but they can't put themselves out there, because in that interim period between you being self-sustaining and sharing your gift and helping loads of other people, and actually making money, it feels too far away and too scary to go through this bit, when if you start working, then your benefits would drop. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's this, and you might not be consciously aware of it, but underneath it all, we're all craving this safety and security. The body wants the familiar, it wants routine, it wants to know what's going on. So we keep ourselves small, and that's a huge resistance. So any more examples of when that it might not be you, but where you've noticed that in someone else?
With illness, another aspect is that could be someone's way of getting attention and sympathy and care if they're unwell.
Yeah.
So they could be used to that and be feeding off that.
Yeah. Because you want that attention, you want that love, you want the support, and it's not going to be there if you can do the things that you know that you can do for yourself. Yeah, it's a huge one.
Flip side of that is that it pushes people away as well. So you can, like, at distance.
Say again?
You can keep people at a distance if you're not feeling well, etc.
Yes.
Over time, people just disappear off, which is advantageous in some circumstances.
Yeah. So sometimes you can use sometimes you can stay in that way of being that actually doesn't fit what you want, but in some way it does, because it gives you a little bit of control about who's in your life, whereas you could actually say, I don't want to be around these people. Logically, when you think of it.
Christian.
Yeah. But then it's like, oh, well, I don't have to do anything then. I don't have to take any action. And that's where the difference is, isn't it? It's waiting about for somebody else to do something, somebody else to make a change, some circumstances to change, for that lottery win. Whatever it is that you're waiting for is outside of you. You don't actually have to do anything. And you could be waiting a very, very long time if you're waiting for that. But it does happen. People are, I said on the first day, that is a huge thing that you hear all the time. Well, if they would just find somebody else and leave me, then that solves all the problems. I'm not the bad person here. They could do that. It's crazy the way it works, but how much of our life are we wasting in this resistance and wanting everybody else outside of us to change in some way? Big one, isn't it?
You just say, so my brother is in not a very nice relationship, but he's been there for 20-something years. And all he ever says is, if I win the lottery,
I used to know that.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what? And I even said to him, Dad's dying, Dad's apartment's there, Scott. You want to go, mate, you crack on. And he just went into panic. What the boys say, his kids, what his mother-in-law said. And he's going into all of this, worrying about what everyone else will do. And so he just went, thanks, but I'll stay. I'll make a pact with you for win the lottery or go. It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, of course it is.
He feels that all of that pressure is on him, so he can't change. He's got to save everything for the sake of everybody else.
Yeah.
But that's not fair on the partner.
No,
either.
I'm not fair
Because,
either.
if the partner actually knew that, would they actually want to stay themselves?
No, you wouldn't.
No.
Horrible to think somebody was plotting to escape.
Yeah.
Waiting to win the lottery to get away from you.
Yeah.
Same for the sake of kids.
Yeah. So that's the thing. You think you've got all of this pressure and you're taking everybody else's stuff into consideration where you can't do anything about it. You can only change you can only change things for yourself. So
Change your perception of it.
yeah. And if you do have the courage to make those changes, then to know that ultimately it works out better for everybody else too. Because like you say, the other people who are in it, by you staying small, by you not making those changes, by you staying the way that you are, what happens for the generations to come if everyone just takes this as like, well, you just put up and shut up, and what can we do about it? And yeah, we can't all win the lottery. We can't all like just suddenly have a partner leave and this magical one come in. You've got to do something. Yeah.
Communicate would be a good start.
Yeah. Communication, yeah.
Because I think we've swung the other way where we just give up in the relationships really quickly, and we just stay in the morning, complain, blame, shame, instead of going, like, can we make this a lot nicer when our kids are growing up, whatever, and we can be a bit more honest, all of that.
Yeah.
It still might not work, but you know.
But at least, yeah.
It's really easy for us to bolt now.
Very easy, even in the early stages. And also the lack of communication. You might think something that's actually not the case at all, and if you communicate about it, then there isn't actually an issue you might find, or there's a solution to that issue.
For my brother, because we're such a loving, openly loving family, she isn't, and he says, I just need to feel that you love me. That's all I'm at, like, just something that we're together, and her attitude is, well, I'm not like that, so if you don't like it, the door. And so it's just like, so now it's
What's in our system?
Wow, sweet, isn't it?
Constellate it.
Gosh,
Yeah.
Check Kaz on it.
Perhaps that's why I was asking that question, does that person need to know about it? And I was thinking it was from my brother, then.
Yeah. So it's really easy. Like,
There is that question.
so it's really easy to see these patterns and these programs and the sticking points of other people, and much harder to see them for ourselves, isn't it? This is where getting a tribe of people who are all committed to the same thing is really important, because we're moving away from that wound tribe, which are there with the excuses to complain about how bad everything is, or that well, oh yeah, I've had that too, and there's this, that, and the other, and you get stuck giving all of your energy to what you don't want.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're with people who are looking for something else, looking to change their life in some way, might not be the same way, but who are open enough and have that security there to say, look, regardless of what happens, we're here for you. You can do this, and encouraging you to take some action, but also to be able to remind you to question yourself, to be curious about what's actually going on for you, to look from the outside and be an observer, and to say, or to own that that's what you're doing, because that can be hard as well, to realize that all along you were the one that was holding yourself back. So it's a huge thing. So finding your growth tribe is a good one. Yeah. And then you can take like the wisdoms from whatever whatever's you've been struggling with and you're wanting to move away from. You can take the wisdom from that and choose something new instead. So the habits that we get into also come into like the things that we say as well as the things that we do. Lilia's going to talk to us about that at some point as well. But the things that we say in terms of like I have, so any diagnosis or anything like that, we were talking about this at breakfast about I have this label and so that's my excuse for not doing this. And sometimes there are things that are there, but it can make it easier on you to have this excuse not to go after what you want. But surely on some part of you, for to have that thought in the first place of what might it be like to not be in this, you've got to have some recognition that there's something you're not happy with, even though you might be familiar with it, on some level, you're not actually as comfortable as what you thought you were. You can't be, because you're thinking of something different, or you're jealous of what somebody else has got. And you're thinking, well, it's all right for them because they don't have this and that and the other. I have this, you know, this is what I have. I am this way because of that. And it's really easy to think, well, you don't know what somebody else has had to do to get to where they want to be, because you're not communicating, you're not having those conversations. We're not used to doing that. Where there's an expectation that things should stay the same, and we all say we want change, we want something to change, but we're suffering from this epidemic of apathy, where people are just like, well, what can I do about it? And we can't change. And when you've got a lot of people together, as much as we've experienced here, that group energy, when you can feel elevated and how much more that elevates you, if you're surrounding yourself in your environment with these people who are committed to staying the same in a way, and really blaming everybody else, well, the government should sort it out, or if the council did this, or it's up to them, then that can bring you down as well. It's a tricky one to navigate, isn't it?
Realise that nobody's going to do it.
Yeah.
You need to do it.
Yeah, it's all up to you.
I used to just assume that, you know, the council would work it out, the government would work it out, but I don't now.
No.
The hospitals would work it out.
No. And we'll not get into how it's kind of designed that way, but yeah, it's that realization that it's up to us to do it. And there's something about being that change and being the example and being the one to commit to changing your energy so that your life can change. Because actually, as much as you want it for everybody else as well as you, and you think, well, if they could just say this, and then I would be inspired to keep going. It doesn't always work that way. And like I said before, like when my marriage ended, he actually said after a couple of months, like, you're so brave to do this, because as much as I was saying that, I was like, well, why am I feeling like this? Because I've got 2 great kids, I've got a house, I've got all of this stuff, the stuff that you're supposed to be really grateful for, and I was grateful for, but like, that's the fairy tale, that's the dream that everyone's got. And it wasn't that there was anything, there wasn't any love there for my husband. I loved him loads, but he wasn't happy, and I just got to the point where I was so worn down trying to make everybody happy, and he was worn down trying to make me happy. And, you know, you get the cycle again of change, and you try different things, and then you end up back at the same point. And at some point you've gone round and round and round. You're like, something's got to change. We've got to go. So making that decision, I had to kind of, like you were saying, Vicky, pull myself away and almost push some people away so that I could be by myself to do this work. Because people would say, you're never going to get one like him again, you know? And it's as if it's like a helpful thing, or like, I would kill for what you had with. I would love someone to just sit and watch the telly with. I would love to have all of this, you know, trying to kind of shame you into staying status quo. And then you've got all of the narrative and all of the stories that come up. Who do you think you are? What makes you think that you're worth more than what you've got? And then you start thinking, hang on a minute, if this was my child, would I be saying that to them? If it was my friend, would I be saying that to them?
It's way easier to say.
Oh,
Way easier.
yeah.
Absolutely.
But I think when people project that,
Mm-hmm.
because then suddenly they start looking at themselves thinking, gee, like, I'm out there.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't got the guts that it takes
No.
to do something about it. So it makes other people feel uncomfortable, and they project that onto you, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of resonance in here. I'm just seeing if there's a thing. Yeah, just a couple of comments there. So, Yeah, so we'll come up against ourselves, and it's really easy when you're in an environment like this to get inspired and motivated and to look at different ways that you can make those changes. That's the easy part. And this is why on this, we're creating this toolkit. You're getting that one thing there that you can go to when you're starting to come towards that resistance, and you can feel yourself dropping back into the everyday, the normal, and just same old, and you know that you want something new. So creating ways that you can get yourself out of that, because if you're thinking a certain way, you're going to feel in a certain way. That's going to produce those chemicals that are craving the same, craving the old. But if you think about just like the breath work we did this morning, if you're high as a kite, your body's created different chemicals, and you want to hang on to that instead.
That's like the positivity drug, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just before you're hanging on to all this negativity, or what I am, this, that, the other, you're just like, no, you want the positives, don't you?
Yeah. And it's like you said, it was that process that you go through and that change. So you can go in, you might dip back in to that old stagnant story. But when you came up this morning and you came out of the breath work and you were just like, I am light, like I'm God, I'm everything, I'm all of this expanse.
Yeah.
And there's room for change there.
Yeah.
But there's not when you're constantly connecting to the same things over and over and over again and hoping that something outside you is going to change. And that's when you're like, right, well, I'll just start it next week, or it doesn't feel right to be doing this, because you're doing something different. You're challenging yourself out of your comfort zone.
And that's empowering, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So empowering to, rather than playing the blame game, you made me angry, you made me this. Whoa, hang on a minute. We're all responsible for ourselves. We're responsible for what's going on in our body, what we're putting in our body. We're responsible for the shit that we put in our heads or not. And when you accept that, it's not what anything's done. What the past is the past, you can't change it. And then when we're just like, no, actually, I'm in control. How empowering is that?
Yeah. So you've got self-responsibility is like the main thing.
Massive.
Stop looking at everybody else. Look at what you can do for you. What you can do for you that's going to impact everyone else, but they're not required to do anything, because you'll wait forever for that to happen.
Yeah.
So if you're turning that attention back in and you're starting to observe your stories, your behavior, all the bullshit you tell yourself, then you're getting more knowledge and information about yourself. So if knowledge is power, then knowledge about yourself is self-empowerment. You know that this person's going to trigger you. You're going to come up against them. But if you look at it from a point of view where you know this is happening and you understand why it's happening, and you can just let that person be, because you can't do anything about that. All you can do is think, well, how can I work on whatever's going on within me? And it's that responsibility. It's up to you to be able to do that. So, yeah, huge one.
Making a habit of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why it's good to do it with your friends, and you can counter that. Somebody goes into blame, shame, complain, and talking about what the body's doing and the labels and the concepts, which obviously deepens the story and makes everything much worse.
Yeah.
It's like, right, okay, let's, instead of sinking down, let's start raising up what we can take.
I think that's it, isn't it? And I've learned that from you as well these last couple of days with regards to how I'm going to deal with my clients. Rather than focusing on the problem, let's just focus on the solution. The past is the past. Where are we going? That's where we're going.
Yeah. And it's like when you're starting to make these changes, even if you're with your friends, even if your friends will go, right, let's get out of this loop. And maybe you're in a habit of there's somebody that you love them, they're your friend, but they're doing something that's really irritating. You can see from the outside, why don't you just leave them, or why don't you just do this? And you get into that habit where every time you meet, there's a conversation that happens about this thing that's happening, which you can't do anything about it, but you're using up all your energy. And you might have all committed that you're going to do that. You're going to let them get on with it, and you're going to be an example, and you're going to work on your stuff. And that's a different energy and different frequency for them to be around, and it might be inspirational to them. But if you were then to meet them and you're sitting having food, and then that conversation comes up, at some point, one of you is going to go, hang on a minute, we're getting back into the gossiping and the blaming and, you know, talking about all of this other stuff. And one of you will stop it and try something different, create a new habit of like, what would be great for them instead, or what would be great for us, or what if we could just let that be and stay in our own lane? How would that feel? How would that look if we trusted them to hold their own and we did what we could do?
And not getting triggered by being called on your BS.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not taking it all personally, you know, because
right, okay.
yeah. Yeah, but it's funny because Vida's been here. So Vida Family Constellations, and she was here, and she's gone today, and she said yesterday, Kaz, would you mind if I did a talk on family constellations, because people are talking about it? And I was like, no, of course not. And then I went away, and this story was in my head. She don't think I'm capable of telling her about family constellations. So I came up and I just said, Vida, I'm telling myself a story, and I need to know, is it this, or is it something else? Because it's that communication that's needed. And I recognized that had come up, and I knew that wasn't the case at all, but it was there. And I knew that she was safe to go to and to say, this is what's running in my head. And she's just like, what on earth? Of course not. And I'm like, is it this or is it that? And she's like, it's neither of those, it's that. You know, but we do this. And it's
act as if it's true.
Yeah, act as if it's true, or say nothing.
Making us feel like that.
Yeah. And that we were talking about this afterwards yesterday when we went for a walk, and I was saying that this happens, and I think it was you, Lizzie, was saying there's times when something happens and you go away and you make it mean this. And so it's years later and you get to the end of your tether and you blow up and you're just like, well, remember when they did that? And if they find out about it, they're like, that wasn't the way it happened at all. It wasn't the way. And for years you've lived with this resentment and this frustration and anger and or the guilt or the shame, or thinking that you've said something that's upset them, but actually it was something else that went on. And you make it mean so much, but actually there's just a conversation that needs to be had. And it's scary to do that. I mean, even though I practice this with people, it was still yesterday, it was the first time I'd done it with Ida, and there's still something comes up where it's just like, how are they? I know she's conscious. I know she's going to be all right with it, but it's a new practice. It's a new habit of saying, this is what I'm telling myself. Can we converse about it? Because this is in my head and I can take responsibility for that. It's not anything she's done or said. It's not anything to do with that. But if we don't take it personally, it's easier to make those changes. And it's easy to take things personally, especially if someone chooses to say something to you when you're trying to change something and they come at you with something else, and it's just like, well, it's this, and you can go into that again. It's a habit. It's a story of going back into, I haven't done enough, I should have done more, and really beating yourself up when instead of giving yourself the grace of being human, but then getting back on it, you know, giving yourself the kindness and the love that you would give to other people instead. And then being willing to be a bit odd to your friends and the people around you. I always think it's funny, there's a, you'll have seen them, Lillian, the videos from when Dr. Joe does his standing meditations, and he does these walking meditations. And then there's parts where there's just thousands of people standing with their eyes closed. And they're actually having a brilliant time, you know, like we were in breathwork. They're just away with the fairies. And there's people videoing the same, like, look at these nutters, like they're like zombies. What are these people doing? You think these people are actually making profound changes, but it's the unknown for them. They don't know that. They haven't experienced that. So the fear in them goes to, there's a zombie apocalypse. How crazy is that? But that's the way that it goes. Yeah.
I remember once off the coast where I live, and there's a couple of regular wild swimmers out. That's a bit choppy, and they're but they're out off the tourist sort of bit where there's a mini golf.
Mm-hmm.
and there's another family over from a place across the water, and they're not used to this group. And the young father, he was like looking around like, has anybody got a phone? There's people out there drowning, we've got to like look at that. And he was having a proper tizzy about getting them help. And I kind of caught him speaking to the people he was with and the little kids. I was like, you know, he's literally like, I'm going to ring the coast guard. And it was just because he hadn't witnessed there. And they're out there just cleansing and swimming and chilling, but it looks to his eye that that shouldn't be happening, you know. And because it's slightly bobby in the waves, I can understand his perception, but it was so clear, you know. I'm like, don't worry, you're out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all right.
So it's very easy, but once you realize that there's some resistance coming up, and you think about, well, it's because it's something new. It's from the survival part. You know, it's there. It's got a reason. There's a purpose for it being there. Like Vida would say, it's got a place. This fear has a place there. Listen to what it's saying, but also you're at a choice point then, because you've noticed it. So are you going to go back into the old behavior? Are you going to choose something new? So it's starting to make those decisions and those choices that are going to pull you forward, knowing that period, that transition between it is going to feel a little bit icky. You're going to push yourself out your comfort zone, but there's no other way through it. You have to make different changes. If you want something new in your life, you have to do something different. And it doesn't have to be all at once, this major thing, but just start with something somewhere.
What do you think is helpful in what Dr. Joe says? The hormones of stress are very addictive.
Absolutely.
People are addicted to drama, addicted to the story, addicted to, and I think when you understand, oh, there's part of me, my body wanting that adrenaline, wanting that cortisol, you're like, right, I need to override that. So when you want to go into drama, which is what we do when we go into the story, it's just like, okay.
Yeah.
The body's wanting to go back there again, but remembering obviously it's, you don't have to do anything.
No. And you see that a lot actually in the healing community, you know, where people can we all do it, we all get angry about how we've been hoodwinked and things that have gone on, but they can get all fired up, and anger has that purpose, but nothing happens with it. It's, you know, if it comes up, let it happen and let it move through, but don't keep going back in, like you say, and feeding the drama and just doing it for the sake of it, because that is where the addiction is. You get addicted to the complaining and the stuff that comes up because you think that's you feeling alive, but it's not.
I find that hurt people. I was thinking that when you were telling that story yesterday, it's like hurt people. And when you're like, oh, right, because anything that's in a loving state would not hurt you. There's anything to hurt you. So when you start to go, right, because you're hurt, you want to hurt me.
Yeah. I'm just looking because Joe commented, and we've talked about Joe before about the changes that you made, and I was just thinking about like resistance and there's something new, you know. You change one thing and something else comes up, and that was what we were talking about at the start. One of the resistance to a change for her was like just this realization that actually if she changed that, then she wouldn't get what she was getting from people around her. She perceived that she wouldn't get that care that she would get from people around her. She's just like, oh, hang on a minute, that's not enough to keep me from what I want. She got to the point where it was like, I've realized now that's what it is. So am I really saying that I'm going to continue with that for the rest of my life just to get that? Or if I make these changes, does that mean that I'm inspiring these people, that I'm going out and I'm making my own happiness? I'm not relying on whatever I'm getting from that. And she just goes for it. And that's how you do it. It's the awareness of it. How can I do this? And do I want that in the past? Do I want that to continue for the rest of my life? Or do I actually want this change? Do I want to be the example? Do I want this to ripple out into my community? Because at the minute, I'm not serving anyone if I am getting caught up in this drama, or I'm gossiping about everybody else. So I'm deciding like that person should do that, or this is what they need to do. But it's stopping us from looking at us, and it's not empowering them. But the more knowledge we get about ourselves and how we're reacting to micro stressors or major stressors, or people or situations, or what's apparently going on in the media, anything like that, and just pull it back to actually what's happening here, what's happening in my body, what is it that I'm craving, what do I want? Do I want my cortisol and my adrenaline to come from all of this, or do I want to be inspired and motivated and to be part of the solution, as you see?
I just wanted to share. So when I split up with my ex-husband, so ended up domestic abuse for 10 years, left him homeless, 2 kids, a car, and about beating him, and all of that stuff. And I carried that for probably about 8 years as a badge of honour. I'm a victim. You've done this shit to me. Told everybody that would listen. It was just, and then I was like, okay. So I started to do some work on myself, and then I started running women's groups, and I'm going to help the woman and all of this. And then I got asked to go and do inspirational talks, and then I got to a stage, and I thought, I don't want to even talk about this crap anymore. I just want to move on with it. And so I had to shelve that, because that became a badge of honour. This happened, I was talking about it again, and I thought, that's in the past.
Well, that's what Dr.
I know.
And Dr. Joe says that as well. Is like, when you change because you stop talking about it. You just are that person.
Boring thing. God,
Yeah.
like that.
I know
This
this.
is probably not even true, half that.
Yeah, it's something you conjured up, and you told the story that many times.
Yeah, and there's people. When I was putting this out,
Yeah.
when I was putting this out for Heal Scotland, and Kirsten was like, "Do a little about me" thing, and I put that out, and there was people who I've known for the past, like 8-10 years or something. They got in touch and like, "Oh my God, I never knew you had cancer. I never knew this happened to you." And I'm just like, yeah, because that was the other version. That was Kaz 1 point whatever. Now I'm like, this version of me. And, I'll be different again next week. And we're meant to change. We're not meant to stay the same. We're not meant to stagnate. But we've got the choice as to what we do. It's up to us.
We're forever evolving, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
And well, we should be.
So is everyone else.
Yeah.
That's the other thing to remember.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But as well, when you think about nature's cycles and the things that are changing, and that all of those points that we're coming to now, things are changing really, really fast. In that age of information now, where there's just so much information and awareness there, and it can become overwhelming. But is it really overwhelming? Because are we just remembering our power and the potential that we have, or are we making it be overwhelming because we're clinging desperately onto the past and saying, no, this is the way that it has to be because this feels secure? Do we really want to hang on to that model of war and conflict everywhere and this whole consumerism? Do we want to hang on to that? It's up to us. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I think I can't say any other comments other than, hey, Kaz, inspired and away for a walk in the sun. And someone said, well said at some point. There's no questions. So yeah, I think that's us done. So thank you for watching. Yeah, and stream. Are you saying bye, everyone?
Bye.